All right, hello. This is our AFAS 160 end of the semester final project. My name is John.
I'm Nick.
And I'm Mitch.
So our project today is a timeline of the life of Billie Holiday, and we focused on the software Tiki Toki. We were all very impressed by the software. A few things to point out to you guys as you go through it. You'll see on the bottom right here the major events, and then throughout the timeline itself, we actually included song names and we put YouTube videos to the song. So when you're free, feel free to look through those and kind of catch yourself up on the songs that Holiday focused on. So what our project will really touch on is we got 6 major key events throughout her life. These 6 events really shaped her as a successful African American woman, musician, and kind of helped pave the way for all of the successes and impacts she had on Black lives throughout the Harlem Renaissance. So first thing we have to note is that she was born April 7th, 1915, and then we'll pass it over to Mitch to do the early life.
All right, so in her early life, she was born in Philadelphia. She then also more grew up in Baltimore. She started ditching school when she was younger, and it got taken up in the courts. So she was sent to the house of the Good Shepherd, and then she was only 9 at the time, so she was probably one of the youngest, or was the youngest in the whole entire house. And then when she got back, she was allegedly reported to have been sexually assaulted. So that must have been rough. But she then also started to soothe herself through music and to start singing it to get through her rough childhood.
Back one. So trying to figure out everything.
All right, so because of her rough childhood, she eventually got into prostitution. Her dad left her at a young age, and her mother moved away to Harlem in 1928. And so in 1928, she also followed her mom and moved to New York. Her mom soon became a prostitute, which led the way for her to also become a prostitute at the young age of only 14. In 1929, May of 1929, the brothel that they both worked at was actually raided, and they were arrested. And immediately following her release, that's when she really started focusing on her music career, and that's when her early discovery started. And that's what John's going to talk about here.
So now we're on to the discovery and how she was kind of found it. As Mitch said, she found a lot of solace and peace and comfort in her music, and so she would love to focus on that. And in her free time, when she was off of work from the prostitute house, she'd be singing in local jazz bars, clubs, bars, what have you. And that's where a fellow named John Hammond actually discovered her and really fell in love with her voice that she had and her stage presence and power. She was first discovered by talent artists in 1930, but it was really around 1934 when she blew up, and her first major song that she released was Your Mother's Son, and she shortly followed that one up with a top hit called Riffing the Scotch. And then now we will transition. And then, so as we said, she was really discovered 1930, 1934, but it was the time that she spent with the Count Basie Orchestra, the year of 1937, that really helped her develop her musical career. And by being with them, she was able to get looped in with a really highly successful saxophonist, Lester Young. Lester Young helped Holiday just really advance her musical talent, bring her to that next level, gave her some guidance, and it was her time with the orchestra that gave her the stage presence and let her kind of develop herself as a on-stage performer. But sadly, the orchestra itself and the managers of it didn't necessarily agree with her style or her color of skin, so she chose to leave the orchestra shortly thereafter.
All right, so in 1939, she came out with one of her most famous songs called Strange Fruit. And it was actually a poem first by a Jewish teacher named Abel Maripol. And she was asked to perform this song. And the way that she performed it was kind of hard for her to do because it was such a frustrating topic. It was about the South and the realization that racism was still alive even after slavery. And it was a very powerful poem. And the way she sang it inspired a lot of people. Not like many other songs for like the civil rights movement or anything else like that inspired people, but more in a way that it shined light on like the realization and the truths that were actually happening in the South. And it kind of like fluctuated between like the beautiful South and the actual racism that was happening there. And because of the message, it was so strong and so powerful that it became one of her most famous songs.
All right, so we have the late life. So when she was starting to get older, she still was doing tours like later in the 50s in Europe, and they're actually pretty successful. But the hard lifestyle that she lived, all the drugs and alcohol, started to wear on her voice, and she was starting not to be able to sing as much. She then ended up having her last performance in New York City in the 1950s. Towards 1959, she then was admitted into the hospital for liver and heart problems. This was all due to, again, her addiction to heroin and alcohol in retrospect. And then she later on passed away in 1959 due to alcohol and drugs.
Well, that concludes our timeline presentation, but now we just want to take a few minutes just to kind of talk about the things that we learned about Holiday's life and some key aspects of it that really, had a prominent impact on me. I'll just go first and say what I saw. First thing I'll say is there's a pretty popular Kanye West song called Blood on the Leaves, and in it opens up with the song Strange Fruit, and Strange Fruit is being sang, and I had no idea that the two were intermixed. I had no idea that Holiday made this song famous and popular. I thought all this time it was a Kanye West song that he found on his own and blew it up. But I just think to see, the current effects of her work throughout her whole life and how it's still very prominent now, in 2013 is when that song was out by Kanye West. It's just very impactful to see a human being can have such a timeless impact on music, much like Holiday had.
So something that I learned and I thought was interesting is that I thought it was really interesting that a songwriter and a musician such as herself could have such a big impact on such a big movement against racism and civil rights in general. From her just singing that poem and the songs that she wrote and sang, really inspired and motivated a lot of people because she had that vivid honesty in her songs. And, she was kind of not a stereotypical singer in that she had like a rough voice and was a little bit different than a lot of the jazz singers at the time. But because of her, the way she sang, she was able to inspire a lot of people in a lot of different ways.
Going off of what Nick said, I kind of learned mostly what he was talking about, just how one girl who was not really born from like anything, she didn't really have anything, she kind of raised herself up in society, even though despite her disadvantages of being colored at the time, through all the discrimination she had to face, she still made her living, made her life.
Yeah, I think one thing, Mitch was just saying, one thing that really has to be noted is all this, the personal plight, the struggles that she had to overcome just to become a successful human being. And, it just really speaks volumes about who she was and the impact that she was able to just cement, based off of her early life. All the trauma in it just is very impressive just to study and read more about.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that concludes our presentation. Thank you for taking the time to watch it. We hope you enjoyed it.